Hey guys, welcome back to Salty Ginger Talk. Thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about the ability to change, how important it is to improve on your ability to understand and manage change. So, from my perspective, I think it's just terribly important in a way that one of the things successful people do is they adapt to change. They recognize changes that are coming, the need to adapt to those new circumstances and develop coping mechanisms and new behaviors to deal with those changes. That goes all the way back to like Darwinism and the origin of the species book that he published. It gets misquoted a lot. Only the strong shall survive. That's actually not what Darwin says, and it's not kind of the thesis of the origin of species. So what it really is those species that are best able to adapt to their new environment as changes in the environment are the ones that have the best chance of surviving going forward. So it literally is about survival in the wild, and I think we lose that sometimes as people because we're at the top of the food chain, we're an evolved species, and we have higher thought and all that jazz, and that's great. But at the end of the day, we're still animals, and we still have natural instincts. We still have emotions. We have things that drive us, and we've got to think about how we best position ourselves for long-term success. So, that's never going to go away. Um, Things always change. They just do. Whether they're good or they're bad, they're going to change at some point. Was fortunate to play baseball for a long period of my life before I kind of grew up and joined the adult world. And it teaches you a lot. It gives you a lot of coping mechanisms because it's a sport filled with failure. So a really good hitter fails 7 out of 10 times. That means you hit 300, and like they pay guys millions of dollars. You wind up in the Hall of Fame for failing at your job 7 out of 10 times. So you have to learn how to cope with things, and that doesn't mean you don't enjoy it. So like if you're going 10 for 20 in your last 20 at bats, you're hitting 500. You're hitting way above where you're going to wind up, and the math tells you at some point you're going to come crashing down to earth. You should enjoy that hot streak and ride it for as long as you can, but be prepared that at some point to get to a 300 average, if you hit 500 over a stretch of time, you're probably going to hit 150 over a stretch of time. So it all shakes out around the 300 mark. That's if you're a really good hitter. So you can enjoy things and enjoy them while they're good and persevere when they're not. Just understand that things are always changing because I think it's important. One of the best things I can tell people about how to manage change is focus on what you control. And you're going to hear that a lot on this channel. Use your head, make fact based decisions, and focus on what you can control. To me, that's been a recipe that's helped me be very successful in life. And when I've strayed from that, I usually wind up in a situation I don't want to be in, or I wind up with problems that I could have avoided if I would have just stayed fact based, not let emotions help drive my decisions, and focus on the things I did have control over. You spend a lot of time thinking and worrying about things you have no control over, and you waste a lot of time and energy worrying about those things, and it's so unproductive because you literally don't have control over it, like we just said. So you gotta figure out how to focus on the things you have control over. Just ask yourself. That's what I do. Is I say, do I actually have control over this? Can I control it? Like taxes. Nobody likes paying taxes. Do you have control over those taxes? You do not, unless you go get elected to Congress and talk 535 other people or 534 other people into changing the tax code. Great, good for you. Then maybe you have control over it. How likely is that to happen? So don't spend a lot of time worrying about those things. You can learn the tax code and say, hey, I'm going to get really good at minimizing the amount of taxes I have to pay because I really don't like paying taxes. I really don't think my money gets spent efficiently and effectively. I want to help. I want other people to get the help that they need, but I don't want to pay into a system that wastes a lot of tax dollars. But you don't have control over that. You're going to have to pay some tax. So figure out how you manage that the best way possible, but you really don't have control over it. When you do those things, when you focus on what you have control over and you don't spend time on things you don't have control over. It's going to help you build resilience. It's going to make you tougher. It's going to give you more grit. It's going to give you more the ability to fight through issues and not let them stop you from achieving the goals that you want to achieve. It's going to enhance your emotional well-being. You're not going to spend a lot of time and energy worrying about things you don't have control over. So you're going to focus and use your energy on productive things that you do have control over, and that's going to help you achieve more. It's going to make you feel better. It's really going to help your emotional well-being. That'll improve your self-esteem and your confidence. You're going to feel good because you can tackle issues as they come up, and you're going to learn to identify the ones you don't have control over and say, hey, I'm going to set those to the side because there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm not going to worry about it. And you're going to focus on the things you do have control over. And that's going to bring you more opportunities, believe it or not. People can recognize when you're a problem solver. People can recognize when you have a positive attitude. People can recognize when you're willing to take on the tough problems and challenges that others shy away from. And they're going to bring you opportunities. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll take them. Doesn't mean you want all those opportunities. But I always think it's better to have the opportunity and turn it down than not get the opportunity at all. So, that's the way I think about it. And by being able to adapt to change, it's going to show others that you can do that, and it's going to bring you more opportunities. There's some defense mechanisms that we use to try to avoid change or avoid dealing with change. I think it's important to watch out for those. Projection. So projection is, I'm going to take all my faults or the things that I wish I could do better and not do better, but I'm going to project them onto somebody else. So my negative thinking, I'm going to take that and project it on someone else. So let's say for a second I'm overweight and I see someone who is in the gym working really hard, and I say, oh, well, that's unhealthy. They're here all the time. They're obsessed with their weight. I don't want to be that way. You're projecting your negative thoughts onto that person. And hey, who knows? Maybe it's true. More often than not, it's really you projecting your issues or your problems onto somebody else. Another very common way is you see the person who's shouting the loudest about the problem, whatever the problem may be, is that way because they're fighting that same problem and it bothers them that they're fighting that problem. So they're projecting onto others and saying, hey, look at what a bad person that is, because it keeps the worldview off of them. It keeps others from looking at them and saying, ha, that person's a bad person because they've got the same exact issue you just projected onto somebody else. Denial, right? I don't have a problem. There's nothing wrong. Everything's good. I think that one's pretty straightforward. You see it a lot in substance abuse, see it a lot in emotional disorders. And like, it's just not healthy. You've got to be able to admit and identify what your problems are and what your challenges are. And then you got to be willing to do the work to change them. And that's where the ability to change comes in. Ability to adapt to change, terribly, terribly important. And then splitting. Splitting is really just all or nothing thinking. So that person did one good thing, so they're a great person all around. We're going to disregard everything else I know or don't know and say because they did this one good thing, they're a great person. I think people treat athletes that way a lot, professional athletes. So because they're good at a sport, you think they've got the rest of their life all buttoned down and they're a great husband or wife. They're a great mother or father. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But by the same token, if somebody screws up one thing, that doesn't make him a terrible person and the second coming to Hitler. So, there's a line in Ted Lasso. I love this line where they're talking about bringing back the assistant coach that's defected to a rival team. And one of the other coaches says, I don't want to do that. And not so many words. Says, I don't want to do that. He screwed us over and he made his choice. And Ted Lasso says, hey, look, I hope either none of us or all of us are judged by our worst moments. And I think it's such a good way to think about stuff because everyone, if you played your low light reel, we always say everybody's highlight reel on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, wherever. Nobody publishes all their losses on those things. They put the ideal life out there because they want you to think their life is that way all the time. We know it's not. Any of us have been around for a while. No, it's not. But you shouldn't judge people on the highlights. You shouldn't judge people on the lowlights. You should try to learn as much as you can and understand what that person's really all about. And it's probably some good, It's probably some not good. That's just typically how everybody is. So how do you manage that thought process? If you want to tackle change, how do you manage your thought process to say, hey, I'm gonna be realistic. I'm gonna try to take a hard look at the world I live in and the things I have going on in my life, and I want to try to figure out how I can go about tackling these things. What I tell people to do is think the opposite. So when you got a bunch of stuff coming at you, I've got a work deadline. My kids got problems in school, and my spouse has another issue that you got to deal with. You got all this stuff flying around. Just focus on knocking out stuff that makes you feel productive. So instead of looking at the big picture and all of these things that are going on in your life, just start focusing on getting stuff done. Even small stuff. Doesn't make your bed, take the trash out, clean up the bathroom. Those little things help you build momentum and get your mind in a positive light, and it gets you going on a path of taking action and taking control over things you have control over. And if you just start knocking out little things, you're going to look up and go, hey, I'm making some progress. It's really not as bad as I thought. And then vice versa, when it's a bunch of little stuff, so you just missed the traffic light and you're in a hurry, and it's going to make you even more late than you already are. You got to get to the post office, and you get there at 5:02 when it closes at 5 o'clock. And if you just would have made that light, you could have got to the post office on time. Or my Wi-Fi is moving slow. That's one of the crazy things. We're so spoiled now. We used to be able to sit and wait for hours. We'd wait for a phone call. We'd wait for a letter. We'd wait for our favorite show to come on TV every week. And we've become such an instant gratification society. We've forgotten how to be patient and enjoy delayed gratification. I mean, enjoy delayed gratification, not force ourselves to wait for gratification, but to enjoy it. In those instances, I think you got to look and say, hey, what's really good in my life? I do that a lot. I've been fortunate to be married to my wife for 30 plus years. We've got 3 great adult children. I've had a lot of success professionally. I was born with a pretty athletic build. So I've been good at sports my whole life. I got a lot of good stuff that was just kind of happened to me. Like, I've got a really good base to build my life off of. So what if I miss the traffic light? So what if the Wi-Fi is moving slow? So what if problem X, Y, or Z, little nagging thing, is a problem? So what? Let it roll off your back. It's not the end of the world. 100 years from now, we're all going to be dead, and no one's going to remember a single thing that you've done, that I've done, that any of us have done. And it's just not worth spending a bunch of time and worrying about. So when it's a little stuff bringing you down, take a step back and look at the big picture. When it's a bunch of stuff coming down on you, block out the big picture and just focus on knocking stuff out. So think the opposite of whatever is bringing you down. And then there's just some basic stuff. Take a walk. Take a walk outside. I cannot stress enough how healing it is to get outside, let the sunlight hit your skin, let the fresh air go in and out of your lungs. It changes your perspective on the world. If you can do it in nature, even better. I've lived in very urban environments, and I've lived in very rural environments. And even in an urban environment, if you're able to get out and walk around, it is so beneficial. And it's such a therapeutic way to just kind of change your thought process and change the trajectory of your day. Regular exercise. I can't stress it enough. Walking is exercise. We have become so sedentary and built so much kind of sitting around into our lives. We can change that. If you take a 10-minute walk at the top of every hour while you're at work, that's 80 minutes of walking. So assume you take 1,000 steps for every 1,000 steps every 10 minutes. That's 8,000 steps just from taking a 10-minute walk at the top of every hour while you're at work. You can do that. You've absolutely got the ability to do that. So do it. Reading. So read something you really enjoy. Doesn't have to, like, if it's a trashy romance novel, awesome. Who cares? If it's a fantasy book, great. Who cares? If it's real estate law because you're really into that, that's great. Who cares? But reading changes the way your brain works. It changes the way your inner voice sounds. And it's a great way to really reset your mind and kind of get your mind off of other stuff. And then meaningful conversations with others. Call up someone that you're close with and just say, hey, I was thinking about you. What are you doing right now? Call up someone you haven't talked to in a long time, but you want to get reconnected with and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. We haven't talked forever. What's going on? Got time to catch up? It could be a 2-minute conversation. It could lead to coffee. It could lead to, who knows? Maybe it's an old boyfriend or girlfriend and you wind up rekindling something that turns into something down the road. Who knows? But connecting with other people is a great way to kind of recenter yourself and say, hey, things are pretty good. I'm going to tackle the problems I've got in my life, and I'm going to deal with the things I have to deal with to make the changes I need to make. So those are all tools that I've used, or I know others have used, to successfully manage through those processes. So just to recap, change, constant and inevitable. Doesn't matter if you want it to change or not. Things are always going to change whether you want them to or not. You might not be changing, but everything around you is changing. So by definition, things are different than they were before. And remember, those that adapt best to change have the best chance for success moving forward. So if you want to be successful, one of the best skills you can develop is to identify and master the ability to adapt to change. Focus on what you can control. Don't spend a lot of time and effort on things that you don't have control over. Spend your time and effort on things you have control over. It's the best return on your personal capital to focus it on things you have control over. Avoid being defensive. See this a lot where you try to talk to someone about stuff and they snap at you and I don't want to hear that and whatever. Don't be defensive. Understand where your challenges and your weaknesses are. Openly embrace those things and develop mechanisms by which you can work on changing those things. And then use the tools and activities we talked about to help manage your thought process. Take a walk. If big stuff's bothering you, take small steps. If all the little things are getting at you, take a step back and think about the big picture. Get some exercise, read a book, talk to a friend, talk to a loved one. Those are all great ways to really kind of manage your thought process and really kind of reset your mental approach to how things are going. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. We really appreciate you checking out our podcast. Don't forget to check out our website, saltygingertalk.com. It's got links to all our social categories, social media platforms on there, access to our podcast, and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thanks again. We'll see you next time. Have a good day.